The lunch rush at Collette's ended the way it always did, with grease smoke, clinging to Autumn Hayes' hair and tips that wouldn't cover half of what she owed. She stood behind the polished mahogany bar, wiping down glasses that caught the afternoon light filtering through the restaurant's tall windows, and tried not to think about the envelope in her purse. Past due. Final notice. Choose your poison. Sophie needed new shoes. The ones she wore to kindergarten yesterday had a hole worn clear through the sole, and Autumn had watched her daughter try to hide it by walking on her toes. 6 years old and already learning to make herself smaller, quieter, less of a burden. The thought made Autumn's chest tight. Table 12 needs another round, Marcus called from the kitchen pass. He was the sous chef, 50-something with kind eyes that never asked questions Autumn couldn't answer. And the boss wants to see you after shift. Autumn's hands stilled on the glass. Dominic Marchesi didn't usually summon his staff. He observed from his corner table during dinner service, signed checks in his office upstairs, and moved through the French Quarter like a shadow that everyone somehow noticed. She'd worked at Colette's for 4 months, and had maybe spoken directly to him twice. Did he say why? She asked, keeping her voice level. Marcus shrugged. Just said to send you up when things slow down. You in some kind of trouble? When am I not? She muttered, but forced a smile. I'll handle the round first. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. She delivered the drinks a businessman's 3-martini afternoon, and 2 tourists who thought hurricanes were exotic instead of cliché, and pocketed a tip that might buy Sophie's shoes if she skipped lunch tomorrow. Again, the restaurant sat on the corner of Royal and Street. Philip, a building that had been standing since 18-something, and looked like it planned to outlast them all. Exposed brick, gas lamps converted to electric, a courtyard in back where jasmine grew wild over wrought iron. Beautiful in that way, New Orleans specialized in beauty that had survived hurricanes and history, and didn't apologize for either. Autumn untied her apron and checked her reflection in the bar mirror. 26 years old, and she looked older in certain lights. Blonde hair pulled back in a bun that was more practical than pretty. Blue eyes that used to be brighter before exhaustion became her baseline. The bruise on her left wrist had faded to that ugly yellow-green color. Almost gone now. She tugged her sleeve down anyway. The stairs to Dominic's office were narrow and dark, the kind of space that felt like a secret. Her shoes scuffed flats that needed replacing before Sophie's did barely made sound on the old wood. She knocked twice. Come in. His office was smaller than she expected. One window overlooking the courtyard, a desk that looked antique and expensive, bookshelves filled with things that weren't for show. He sat behind the desk, sleeves rolled to his elbows, reading something on his laptop with the kind of focus that made the rest of the world irrelevant. Dominic Marchesi was 34, dark-haired, dark-eyed, with the kind of face that medieval painters would have used for fallen angels. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth that didn't smile often but devastated when it did. He wore his wealth quietly tailored shirts, simple watches, no jewelry except a signet ring on his right hand that looked old enough to have a story. Autumn had heard the rumors. Everyone had. That Collette's was a legitimate business floating on illegitimate money. That Dominic owned half the quarter and controlled the other half through favors and fear. That he was connected to families up north, old Italian money with roots that ran deeper than the law could reach. That you didn't cross him unless you'd made peace with consequences. But he'd also given her a job when she'd showed up 4 months ago with a black eye she'd tried to hide under makeup and a resume that had more gaps than credentials. He'd looked at her for maybe 10 seconds, asked if she could make an old-fashioned, and hired her when she'd made one that he actually finished. Sit down, Autumn, he said without looking up. She sat in the leather chair across from him, hands folded in her lap to keep them steady. He closed the laptop and gave her his full attention. That was the thing about Dominic when he looked at you. You felt seen in a way that was either comforting or terrifying depending on what you were hiding. How's Sophie? He asked. The question surprised her. She's good. Smart. Drives her teacher a little crazy with questions. Good. Questions mean she's thinking. He leaned back in his chair. You've been working here 4 months. Yes, sir. Don't call me sir. Makes me feel like my father. A ghost of a smile. You're good at the job. Customers like you. You don't steal, don't start drama, show up on time even when you look like you haven't slept. Autumn's throat tightened. Thank you. Marcus says you picked up 3 extra shifts last week. I needed the hours. And this week you're scheduled for 4 doubles in a row. He pulled out a paper her time card, printed with her chaotic schedule marked in her own handwriting. That's not sustainable. Fear crept up her spine. Are you cutting my hours? I'm asking why you need them. She looked at her hands. The cuticles were ragged from nervous picking, her nails unpolished and short. Rent's due. Sophie needs things. That's just how it is. Dominic was quiet for a moment. When she finally looked up, his expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had sharpened. Recognition, maybe. Or calculation. Where's Sophie's father? He asked, voice carefully neutral. Not in the picture. By choice or circumstance? Autumn's jaw tightened. Does it matter? It does when you show up to work trying to hide a split lip. He said it gently, but the words landed like stones. It did when you wore long sleeves in August. It does now. When you're pulling doubles because you're too proud to ask for help and too scared to stay still. Her breath caught. She hadn't thought anyone noticed. She'd been so careful. I'm fine, she said, the automatic lie. Fine is a code word. Dominic stood and moved to the window, hands in his pockets. I employ 43 people in this restaurant alone. I know every one of their names, their situations, what keeps them up at night. That's not kindness, Autumn. That's protection. You can't protect what you don't understand. She stared at his back. Why do you care? Because you work for me. That means something. He turned to face her. So I'll ask you again, and I'd appreciate honesty. Where's Sophie's father? Autumn closed her eyes. She was so tired. Tired of running, tired of lying, tired of checking over her shoulder every time she walked to her car. His name is Marcus, she said quietly. Different Marcus, not the chef. Marcus Broussard. We were together for 3 years. He has a temper and friends in the wrong places. I left him 8 months ago, got a restraining order, moved parishes. He found me anyway. How recently? Last week. Waited outside Sophie's school. Didn't approach, just stood there so I'd know he could. Her voice cracked. The order expired and the judge wouldn't renew it. Said I had no new evidence of threats. But I see him everywhere. His car parked down my street. His friend watching me at the grocery store. He's not touching me, just making sure I know he's there. Dominic's expression didn't change, but his hands curled into fists in his pockets. Has he hurt you recently? She shook her head. Not since I left, but the last time. She stopped, unable to finish. The last time? He prompted, voice soft but insistent. He broke my wrist. Told Sophie Mommy was clumsy. The memory burned. That's when I knew I had to leave or he'd kill me eventually. Maybe not on purpose, but it wouldn't matter by then. The office felt smaller suddenly. Autumn realized she was shaking. Dominic moved back to his desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out a business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, and slid it across to her. This is my personal number, not the restaurant line. If Marcus Broussard comes near you or Sophie again, you call me immediately. Day or night, doesn't matter. Understand? She looked at the card. Just his name and a phone number. Nothing else. Mr. Marchesi, I appreciate the concern, but this isn't your problem. Dominic, he corrected. And yes, it is. You work in my restaurant. You're under my roof 6 days a week. That makes you mine to protect. Something in the way he said mine made her pulse quicken. Not possessive, but absolute. A statement of fact. A statement of fact. I can't afford to owe you anything, she whispered. You don't owe me anything. This is what I do. He sat back down, his gaze never leaving hers. Go home. Rest. Tomorrow you're working. Day shift only, no double. Marcus will cover dinner. I need the money. You'll get paid for the full shift anyway. Consider it a bonus for making the best old-fashioned in the quarter. He picked up his pen, returning to whatever he'd been working on before she arrived. Take Sophie somewhere nice this weekend. She deserves a mother who isn't running on fumes. Autumn stood slowly, legs unsteady. She pocketed the card and moved toward the door. Her hand was on the knob when she turned back. Why are you being nice to me? Dominic looked up. For a moment, something raw crossed his face, too fast to name but heavy enough to feel. Because someone should have been before, he said simply. She left before the tears could fall. The walk to her car took her through the quarter's evening transformation. Tourists crowded Bourbon Street 3 blocks over, their laughter floating on air that smelled like beignets and brass. Street musicians set up, on corners, guitar cases open for tips. The gas lamps flickered to life one by one, painting everything in gold. Autumn's car was a 15-year-old Civic, with a dent in the passenger door and a check engine light that had been glowing for 6 months. She climbed in, locked the doors, always locked the doors, and sat for a moment with her forehead against the steering wheel. The card Dominic gave her felt heavy in her pocket. She pulled it out, studying the embossed letters, Dominic Marchesi, and below it, 10 digits that felt like a lifeline she didn't know if she should grab. Her phone buzzed. A text from her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who watched Sophie after school. Sophie's asking when you'll be home. She drew you a picture. Autumn smiled despite everything. Sophie drew her a picture almost every day, stick figures holding hands, hearts in crayon. I love you, Mommy, spelled with letters that ran into each other. On my way. Be there in 20 minutes. She started the car and pulled into traffic, eyes automatically checking the rearview mirror for Marcus's black Charger. It wasn't there. It hadn't been there all week, actually. Maybe he'd finally given up. Maybe the restraining order had scared him more than she thought. Maybe the Charger pulled out from a side street 2 blocks behind her. Autumn's hands tightened on the wheel. Her breath came faster. She told herself it was a coincidence. Lots of black Chargers in New Orleans. Lots of men who drove like they owned the road. But when she turned left, he turned left. When she took the long way through the garden district instead of the highway, he followed at a distance that wasn't quite close enough to be threatening but wasn't far enough to be coincidence. He was letting her know. I'm here. I see you. You can't escape. By the time she pulled up to Mrs. Chen's small shotgun house in Gentilly, Autumn's hands were shaking so badly she could barely turn off the ignition. The Charger had peeled off 3 blocks back, his message delivered. Sophie burst out of the front door before Autumn could even reach the porch. 6 years old, with her father's dark hair and Autumn's blue eyes, skinny legs pumping, backpack bouncing. Mommy! She crashed into Autumn's legs with the force of pure joy. Autumn scooped her up despite the strain in her back, buried her face in Sophie's hair, and breathed. This was why she kept running, kept fighting, kept pretending fine was more than a code word. Hey, baby girl, did you have a good day? We learned about butterflies, and I got a gold star on my spelling test. Sophie wriggled free and grabbed Autumn's hand. Come see my picture. Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway, 70-something with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She caught Autumn's gaze and mouthed, You okay? Autumn nodded, lying with her whole body. Inside, Sophie's picture was taped to Mrs. Chen's refrigerator. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, standing in front of a house with a triangle roof, and square windows, a yellow sun in the corner, hearts floating everywhere. That's you and me, Sophie explained unnecessarily. In our new house. The one we're gonna get when you save enough money. Autumn knelt down to Sophie's level, pushing hair out of her daughter's face. It's beautiful, baby. The best one yet. Can we really get a new house? With a yard? And maybe a dog? Someday, Autumn promised, hating herself for how many times she'd said someday, like it was a real place they were heading instead of a dream that stayed out of reach. But right now we have our apartment, and that's pretty good too, right? Sophie nodded, but her smile dimmed just a little. She was too young to understand the difference between a home and a hiding place, but she was starting to sense it. They said goodbye to Mrs. Chen Autumn, pressing $40 into her hand despite protests, and drove the 10 minutes to their apartment. 3rd floor walk-up in a complex that had seen better decades. Thin walls, flickering hallway lights, neighbors who minded their own business because everyone here had something to mind. Autumn checked the parking lot twice before getting out. No black Charger. No Marcus leaning against his hood with that smile that used to make her feel special, and now made her skin crawl. Just the evening settling into night, and the weight of a business card in her pocket that might be the most dangerous thing she'd ever been given. Dominic Marchesi didn't sleep well. He never had. Not since he was 14 and watched his uncle take a bullet meant for his father in a restaurant not unlike the one he now owned. Sleep meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant someone else controlled the narrative of your life. So when his phone rang at 2:47 in the morning, he was already awake, reading reports from his property managers across the quarter. He answered on the second ring, heavy breathing, panic compressed into sound. Autumn? I'm sorry I'm so sorry for calling. I didn't know who else. Her voice broke around the edges, fraying like old rope. Dominic was already standing, reaching for his pants. Where are you? My apartment. He's outside. His car's been circling for an hour and now he's just sitting there, watching my window. Sophie's asleep, and I can if she wakes up and sees him. Lock your doors. Don't open them for anyone except me. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He was already moving, grabbing his keys, his gun. What's your address? She gave it to him, words tumbling over each other. He knew the complex. Section 8 housing mixed with working poor, the kind of place where people kept their heads down and their curtains closed. Autumn, listen to me. I need you to breathe. Can you do that? A shaky inhale. Yes. Good. I'm in my car. Stay on the phone with me. He drove through empty streets, phone wedged between his shoulder and ear. The French Quarter looked different at this hour, cleaned of tourists, stripped down to its bones. Street cleaners sprayed away the night's sins. A homeless man pushed a shopping cart past shuttered galleries. The city's real face, the one it only showed to people who lived in its margins. Is he still there? Dominic asked. Yes. Autumn's voice was barely a whisper. He knows I see him. He's smoking a cigarette, just leaning against his car like he has all night. What's he driving? Black Charger, tinted windows. License plate Delta November 6382. Dominic committed it to memory. When I get there, I'm going to park and approach his vehicle. You stay inside with Sophie. Understand? What are you going to do? Have a conversation. Dominic, he's dangerous. So am I. The line went quiet. He could hear her breathing, could almost feel her trying to decide if she'd just traded one dangerous man for another. I'm not going to hurt him, Dominic said softer. Not tonight, but I am going to make sure he understands the new reality. What reality? That you're not alone anymore. He pulled into the complex 12 minutes after her call. The building was exactly what he expected. Crumbling stucco, rusted railings, parking lot full of cars, held together by prayer and duct tape. Third-floor corner unit, lights on behind thin curtains. And there, parked directly below her window, a black Charger with a man leaning against the hood, smoking, watching. Dominic parked 2 spaces away and stepped out. He left his gun in the glove box. This wasn't that kind of conversation, but made sure his phone was recording audio in his pocket. Sometimes the best weapons were legal ones. Marcus Broussard was smaller than Dominic expected. Maybe 5 to 10, wiry build, the kind of strength that came from manual labor rather than gyms. Late 20s with a patchy beard and eyes that tracked Dominic's approach with lazy arrogance. Help you with something? Marcus asked, not moving from his casual lean. I'm looking for Marcus Broussard. Yeah? Who's asking? Dominic Marchesi. I own Collette's, where Autumn works. Marcus's smile sharpened. Ah, the boss. He took a drag of his cigarette. She call you? That's cute. Would she tell you that I'm stalking her? That I'm dangerous? She told me you've been following her. Sitting outside her daughter's school. Parking here at 3 a.m. to terrorize her. It's a free country. I can park wherever I want. Marcus flicked ash onto the pavement. And Sophie's my daughter too. Maybe I just miss my family. Dominic studied him. There was a particular kind of man who used the word family like a weapon, who believed ownership and love were the same thing. Marcus Broussard wore that belief like cologne. If you missed your family, Dominic said, voice even, you'd have visited during reasonable hours. You'd have called first. You wouldn't sit in your car at 3 a.m., smoking cigarettes and making sure she knows you're here. Marcus pushed off the hood, closing the distance. Not quite aggressive, but testing boundaries. And you are what her knight in shining armor? Please, you look at her the same way I do? Don't pretend this is about protecting her. Dominic didn't rise to the bait. I look at her like an employee who deserves to feel safe. You look at her like property you're trying to reclaim. There's a difference. She tell you what she did? How she took my daughter and ran in the middle of the night? How she lied to the judge about me? She told me you broke her wrist. That you terrorized her for 3 years. That she finally got brave enough to leave and you can't stand that she doesn't need you anymore. Marcus's jaw clenched. You don't know shit about what we had. I know you're standing in a parking lot at 3 a.m., trying to scare a woman who just wants to live her life. That tells me everything. For a moment, Marcus looked like he might swing. His hand curled into a fist, his weight shifted forward. Dominic didn't move. He'd been in enough fights to know that the man who moved first was usually the man who was scared. Marcus exhaled through his nose and stepped back. You threatening me? I'm informing you. Autumn works for me. That means she's under my protection. If you come near her again at her home, at her daughter's school, at my restaurant, you'll have a problem that's bigger than a restraining order." "Is that right?" Marcus laughed, but it sounded hollow. "And who are you to make threats? You think because you own a restaurant you're somebody?" Dominic smiled. It wasn't warm. "I think you should ask around about who I am before you dismiss what I'm saying. Go ahead, I'll wait." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes then. Recognition, maybe, or the beginning of fear. The French Quarter was small. People talked. And Dominic Marchesi's name carried weight that went far beyond restaurant ownership. "This isn't over," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its edge. "Yes, it is." Dominic pulled out his phone, showed Marcus the recording app that had been running since he stepped out of the car. "I just recorded you admitting to following Autumn, parking outside her home at 3 a.m., and refusing to respect her boundaries. If anything happens to her, anything at all, this recording goes to the police along with a statement from me about what I witnessed here tonight." Marcus's face went pale. "You can't." "I already did." Dominic pocketed his phone. "Now get in your car and leave. Don't come back. Don't follow her. Don't sit outside Sophie's school. If I see you anywhere near them again, the next conversation won't be this pleasant." For a long moment, Marcus stood frozen. Then he spat on the ground near Dominic's shoes, a gesture of defiance that fooled no one, and climbed into his Charger. The engine roared to life. He peeled out of the parking lot fast enough to leave rubber on the pavement. Dominic watched until the taillights disappeared. Then, looked up at Autumn's window. Her silhouette stood behind the curtain, small and still. He pulled out his phone and called her. "He's gone," Dominic said when she answered. "You can breathe now. What did you say to him?" "That if he comes near you again, he'll regret it." A long silence. Then, barely audible. "Thank you. I'm coming up. We need to talk about next steps. It's 3 a.m, and you're not going to sleep until we have a plan. Buzz me in." He heard her hesitate, heard the weight of letting him into her space, into her life in a way that couldn't be undone. Then the intercom buzzed and the security door clicked open. The stairwell smelled like old cooking and mildew. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow. Dominic climbed 3 flights, his dress shoes echoing in the concrete shaft. Autumn's door was the last one on the left. She opened it before he could knock, standing in the doorway wearing an oversized sweatshirt and pajama pants, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders. Without makeup, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "Come in," she whispered. "Sophie's sleeping." The apartment was a small living room that bled into a kitchenette, 1 bedroom door closed, bathroom visible through another doorway. But it was clean. Obsessively so, the kind of clean that came from control being the only thing you had left. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A laundry basket sat folded by the couch. 1 window looked out over the parking lot where Marcus's car had been. Dominic noticed the baseball bat leaning in the corner by the door, the chain lock, the rubber wedge under the door frame. "Sit," Autumn said, gesturing to the couch. "Can I get you water? Coffee? I don't have much. I'm fine." "Sit with me." She perched on the opposite end of the couch, pulling her knees to her chest. Defensive posture. He'd seen it before in people who'd learned the hard way that the world wasn't safe. "He'll come back," Autumn said quietly. "He always comes back. You scared him tonight. But once he talks to his friends, once he convinces himself you're bluffing—" "I don't bluff." She looked at him. Really looked, like she was trying to see past the expensive clothes and calm demeanor to whatever lay beneath. "Who are you, Dominic?" "Really?" He considered how much truth to give her. Too little and she wouldn't trust him. Too much and she'd run. "I'm someone who keeps my people safe," he said finally. "That's all you need to know right now. Marcus has friends, gang connections. If you keep pushing, let me worry about Marcus's friends." Dominic leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow you're going to pack a bag for you and Sophie. Enough for a few days. You're going to move into one of my properties." Autumn's eyes widened. "I can't." "You can, and you will. It's secure. Doorman, camera system. Marcus won't be able to get within a block without me, knowing I can't afford. It's not about money. This is about keeping you alive until I can make sure Marcus understands that you're not his to terrorize anymore." She shook her head. "If I run again, if I keep letting other people solve my problems, this isn't running." Dominic's voice was firm, but gentle. This is strategy. You can't fight a war from a position of weakness. We move you somewhere safe. We document every time Marcus violates boundaries. We build a case that even a sympathetic judge can't ignore. Then you can go back to your life knowing he can't touch you. And what do I owe you for all this? The question landed heavy between them. Dominic understood what she was really asking. What's the price? What happens when you decide to collect? Nothing, he said. You owe me nothing. This is what I do for people under my protection. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you do this for someone you barely know? Dominic was quiet for a moment. In the dim light from the kitchen, Autumn's face was all shadows and sharp edges. Exhaustion wore on her like a second skin. Because I can, he said simply. And because no one should have to live the way you've been living, looking over your shoulder, sleeping with a baseball bat by your bed, teaching your daughter that home is just the place you hide. Tears slipped down Autumn's cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. What if he hurts you? She whispered. What if trying to help me puts you in danger? Dominic almost smiled. Autumn, I've been in danger since I was born. Marcus Broussard doesn't scare me. What scares me is doing nothing and waking up one day to find out he finally went too far. She looked at him for a long time, searching his face for lies or hidden motives. He let her look. He had nothing to hide from her. Okay, she said finally. We'll move. But just until this is over, I'm not taking advantage. You're surviving. There's a difference. A sound came from the bedroom. Both of them froze. Then a small voice. Mommy? Autumn was up instantly, moving to the bedroom door. I'm here, baby. Go back to sleep. I heard voices. Is someone here? Dominic stood, giving Autumn space to handle it. But she surprised him by opening the door wider and gesturing him over. Sophie sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. She wore princess pajamas and her dark hair stuck up in wild angles. When she saw Dominic, she tilted her head. Who's that? This is Mr. Marchesi, Autumn said gently. He's Mommy's boss from the restaurant. He stopped by to talk about work. Sophie studied him with the brutal honesty of childhood. It's nighttime. Why are you talking about work at nighttime? Dominic crouched down so he was at her eye level. Because your mom is very good at her job, and I needed to ask her something important. I'm sorry if we woke you. Are you nice to my mommy? The question surprised him. I try to be. Good. Some people aren't nice to her. Sophie's voice was matter of fact, but the words hit Dominic like a fist. This child had seen things no 6-year-old should see. I'll always be nice to your mom, Dominic said. That's a promise. Sophie nodded, satisfied. Okay, I'm going back to sleep now. Good night, Mr. Marchesi. Good night, Sophie. Autumn tucked her daughter back in, whispered something Dominic couldn't hear, and closed the door gently. When she turned back to him, her expression was different. Softer, but also more resolved. She likes you, Autumn said. She doesn't usually like strangers. I'm honored. When do you want us to move? Tomorrow afternoon. I'll send someone to help you pack. The apartment is in the Garden District, 2 bedrooms, fully furnished. Sophie can walk to a good school from there. Autumn's hands twisted together. This feels too big. Like I'm asking for too much. Dominic moved closer, stopping a respectful distance away. You're not asking. I'm offering. There's a difference. Why does it feel like I'm stepping into something I won't be able to step out of? He met her eyes. Because maybe you're tired of stepping out. Maybe you're ready to stand still and let someone else handle the things that have been breaking you, the silence between them filled with everything they weren't saying. The attraction that had been simmering since he'd hired her 4 months ago. The danger of mixing protection with something more complicated. The knowledge that once he started down this path, there was no going back. I should go, Dominic said, though he didn't move. You need rest. Thank you. The words were inadequate for what he'd done, but they were all she had. For everything. Lock the door behind me. I'll have someone watching the parking lot for the rest of the night, just in case Marcus is stupid enough to come back. Her eyes widened. You're posting a guard? Consider it an investment in employee retention. He smiled slightly. Get some sleep, Autumn. Tomorrow your life gets easier. He left before she could argue, before the pull of her could make him say things that were too honest, too soon. In the stairwell, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Enzo. I need eyes on an apartment building in Gentilly, 3rd floor corner unit. Subject is Marcus Broussard. I'm texting you his photo and plate number now. If he comes within 2 blocks, I want to know immediately. Enzo Ricci had worked for the Marchesi family for 20 years. He asked no questions. How long? Until I say otherwise. Consider it done. Dominic climbed into his car and sat in the darkness for a moment. Through Autumn's window, he could see her silhouette moving. Checking locks, checking windows, still scared, but maybe for the first time in months, not alone. His phone buzzed. A text from his cousin Marco, who handled security for all the family's properties. Heard you had an interesting night. We need to talk about the Broussard situation. Dominic started the car. Tomorrow. I'm handling it. That's what I'm worried about. He didn't respond. Marco would worry regardless, it was his job. But Dominic had made his decision. Autumn Hayes was under his protection now. That meant something. That meant everything. And Marcus Broussard was about to learn what happened when you touched something that belonged to Dominic Marchesi. Section 5. The glimpse behind the mask. Vulnerability exchange. The apartment in the Garden District was not what Autumn expected. She'd imagined something cold and expensive, the kind of place that felt more like a showroom than a home. What she got instead was a shotgun double with high ceilings, original hardwood floors, and windows that let in the kind of light that made everything look softer. 2 bedrooms, both with actual closets. A kitchen with appliances that worked. A small backyard with a magnolia tree and enough grass for Sophie to run. Furniture that was nice but not pretentious, overstuffed couch. Solid dining table. Beds with frames instead of mattresses on the floor. It's too much, Autumn said for the 3rd time as Sophie ran from room to room, squealing about having her own space. Marco Marchesi, Dominic's cousin and head of security, carried the last box inside and set it down with a grunt. He was built like someone who'd played football and never stopped working out, with dark hair shaved close and a scar through his left eyebrow that suggested he'd learned hard lessons the hard way. Boss says you stay here, Marco said, not unkindly. Rent's covered for 6 months. Utilities too. You need anything, you call this number. He handed her a card with yet another phone number Autumn didn't quite understand. 6 months? Her voice cracked. I can't possibly. Lady, you want to argue with Dominic, be my guest. But I've known him my whole life and I've never seen him lose an argument when he's made up his mind. Sophie appeared in the doorway, breathless. Mommy, there's a window seat in my room. Can I put my stuffed animals there? Sure, baby. Autumn managed a smile. Go start unpacking. After Sophie disappeared again, Autumn turned to Marco. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why is he doing this? Really? Marco studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. You know what business we're in? I've heard rumors. Rumors are usually close enough to truth. He leaned against the doorframe. Dominic's father, my uncle, he built an empire. Legitimate businesses floating on illegitimate foundations. Restaurants, real estate, shipping. The kind of operation that makes you powerful and makes you careful. And Dominic inherited it. More like he perfected it. Uncle Sal was a bull, he'd charge at problems, break things, make noise. Dominic's different. He's strategic, quiet. Most dangerous man I know, and I know a lot of dangerous men. Autumn's stomach tightened. That's not reassuring. It should be. Marco's gaze was direct. Because Dominic doesn't do anything halfway. When he decides to protect someone, he means it. And when someone threatens what's his S, he paused. Let's just say Marcus Broussard picked the wrong woman to terrorize. I'm not his. Marco smiled slightly. Tell him that. After Marco left, Autumn stood in her new living room and tried to process what her life had become. 48 hours ago, she was bartending and barely making rent. Now she was living in a Garden District apartment that probably cost more per month than she made in 3, under the protection of a man who was either her salvation or her next mistake. Sophie ran in and wrapped her arms around Autumn's waist. I love it here, Mommy. Can we stay forever? Autumn stroked her daughter's hair. We'll see, baby. But even as she said it, she knew. They couldn't stay forever. This wasn't their life. This was borrowed time, borrowed safety, borrowed everything. And eventually, she'd have to pay it back. She just hoped the price wouldn't break her. That evening, Dominic arrived with takeout from a Vietnamese place down the street, and the casual assumption that he was welcome. He knocked twice, then let himself in with a key Marco must have given him. I brought pho, he announced, holding up bags. Marco said Sophie likes noodles. Autumn appeared from the bedroom where she'd been helping Sophie organize her clothes. She wore jeans and a t-shirt, hair pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup. She looked younger like this, less guarded. "You have a key to my apartment," she said. "Our apartment," he corrected. "I own the building. But yes, I should have asked. Would you like me to leave it?" She considered. The smart answer was yes. The honest answer was more complicated. "Keep it," she said finally, "but knock first." "Deal." He moved to the kitchen and started unpacking food. "Where's Sophie?" In her room, building a fort out of boxes. "Should I have brought more food?" "She already ate." Autumn moved to help him, pulling out bowls. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted to check on you. Make sure you settled in okay." They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that develops between people who've shared something bigger than words. When the soup was ready, they sat at the small dining table by the window overlooking the street. "This is weird," Autumn said, taking a sip. The broth was perfect, hot and savory with herbs she couldn't name. "What is?" "This. You. Acting like my friend instead of my boss." Dominic set down his spoon. "Would you prefer I act like your boss?" "I'd prefer to understand what's happening. I'm keeping you safe." "Why?" The question hung between them. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, staring into his bowl like it held answers. "My mother," he said finally, "left my father when I was 12. She tried to leave quietly, planned it for months, got an apartment across the lake, filed, paperwork, thought she'd done everything right." Autumn's breath caught. "My father found her anyway, dragged her back, broke her arm in 3 places to teach her about loyalty." Dominic's voice was flat, factual. "She never tried to leave again. Died when I was 22, ovarian cancer that she ignored until it was too late because going to doctors meant answering questions about old injuries." "Dominic, so when I see a woman trying to escape a man who thinks he owns her, I don't see an employee. I see my mother. And I do what I didn't have the power to do back then." Silence filled the kitchen. Outside, a streetcar rattled past, its bell echoing. "I'm not your mother," Autumn said gently. "No, you're stronger than she was. You left. You stayed gone." If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. You're protecting your daughter instead of teaching her to accept violence as love. His eyes met hers. "But that doesn't mean you should have to do it alone." Autumn felt something crack in her chest, some wall she'd built to keep herself separate from hope. "What happens when this is over?" she asked. "When Marcus is handled and I don't need protection anymore? Then you get to decide what comes next. Stay here. Find your own place. Move to a different city. Whatever makes you feel safe. But you'll make that choice from a position of strength, not fear." "And if I want to stay?" The question surprised them both. Dominic's expression shifted, something warm and careful moving across his face. "Then you stay," he said simply. Before Autumn could respond, Sophie appeared in the doorway, dragging her favorite stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, I can't find Mr. Whiskers." "Check the blue box, baby." "I think he's with your books." Sophie nodded and started to leave, then paused. "Hi, Mr. Marchesi. Hi, Sophie. How's your fort?" "Really good. Do you want to see it?" Dominic glanced at Autumn, who nodded. "I'd love to." He followed Sophie down the hall, and Autumn heard her daughter's excited chatter explaining the architectural decisions behind her cardboard kingdom. She moved to the doorway and watched Dominic crouch down to Sophie's level, listening with the same focused attention he gave everything else. Sophie showed him her drawings, her favorite books, the way she'd organized her stuffed animals by size. And Dominic asked questions, real ones, not the patronizing kind adults usually lobbed at children. "Why is this one your favorite?" he asked, pointing to a worn purple rabbit. "Because Mommy gave him to me when I was little. She said he'd keep me safe when she couldn't." Something passed over Dominic's face. "That's a big job for a rabbit." "He's very brave," Sophie said seriously. "Like you." "What makes you think I'm brave?" "You came to help Mommy in the middle of the night. Only brave people do that." Dominic looked up and caught Autumn watching from the doorway. Their eyes held for a moment, and she saw something in his gaze that made her pulse quicken, not fear, but its opposite. Recognition. Connection. The beginning of something that couldn't be undone. "Your mom is pretty brave too," Dominic said to Sophie. She moved here to keep you safe. That takes more courage than anything I've ever done. Sophie considered this. Can I tell you a secret? Of course. She leaned in, whispering loud enough for Autumn to hear. Sometimes Mommy cries at night. She thinks I'm sleeping, but I hear her. I think she's sad because Daddy was mean. Autumn's chest tightened. She'd tried so hard to keep her pain separate from Sophie's childhood. Dominic's voice was gentle. I think you're right. But you know what? I don't think she'll have to cry anymore. Not if we help her feel safe. Will you help? I promise. Sophie hugged him then, a sudden fierce embrace that took Dominic by surprise. He froze for half a second, then carefully wrapped his arms around the small girl. When Sophie pulled back, she was smiling. Okay, you can go back to talking with Mommy now. I have to. Finish my fort. Dominic stood, exchanging a look with Autumn as he passed her in the doorway. Neither of them spoke until they were back in the kitchen. She's special, Dominic said quietly. She's my whole world. Autumn's voice was thick. If something happened to her because of me, nothing's going to happen to her. I won't let it. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. He stepped closer. Autumn, I know you're used to fighting alone. I know trusting someone feels dangerous, but I'm asking you to try, just for a little while. Let me handle Marcus. Let me keep you safe. And if I fail, he paused. I won't fail. She looked up at him. He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell the subtle cologne he wore, could feel the heat radiating from his body. Why does this feel like more than protection? She whispered. Because maybe it is. The admission hung between them, dangerous and honest. Autumn knew she should step back, should, reinforce the boundaries that kept employer and employee separate. But she was tired of running, tired of being alone, tired of pretending that safety and desire couldn't exist in the same space. I don't know how to do this, she said. Do what? Accept help, trust someone, stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Dominic reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers barely brushing her skin. Then don't think about it. Just let it happen, one day at a time. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened. What is it? Marco. Marcus was spotted near Sophie's old school. He's looking for you. Fear spiked through her. He doesn't know we moved, right? Not yet. But he will eventually. Dominic was already typing a response. I need to go handle something. Will you be okay here? What are you going to do? He met her eyes. What needs to be done? Dominic. Lock the door behind me. The building has security cameras and Marco's guys are watching. You're safe here. He paused at the door. Trust me, Autumn. She did. That was the terrifying part. After he left, Autumn cleaned up the dinner dishes and checked on Sophie, who'd fallen asleep in her fort surrounded by stuffed animals. She carried her daughter to bed, tucked her in, and stood watching her sleep. This life, the safety, the apartment, the man who appeared at 3 a.m. to chase away demons it felt too fragile to believe in. But Sophie was sleeping without fear for the first time in months. That had to mean something. Autumn moved to the living room window and looked out at the quiet street. Somewhere in the city, Dominic was confronting Marcus. Somewhere in her chest, her heart was rewriting the rules about what she deserved and who she could trust. She just hoped neither of them would end up broken by the time this was over. Marcus Broussard had exactly 3 friends he could count on, and all of them owed him favors that couldn't be repaid in cash. The kind of favors that required blood or loyalty or both. He sat in a dive bar on Claiborne Avenue, the kind of place where questions weren't asked and security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. His knuckles were bruised from punching a wall earlier, and his second whiskey wasn't touching the rage that had been building since that restaurant owner had humiliated him in Autumn's parking lot. So what do you want us to do? Asked Tyrell Washington, a wiry man with prison tattoos crawling up his neck. He'd done 5 years for aggravated assault and came out meaner than he went in. I want him to understand that he made a mistake, Marcus said. I want him to know what happens when you get between a man and his family. Man, you sure about this? This from Jerome Pike, who'd been Marcus's friend since high school and knew enough to be worried. You're talking about Dominic Marchesi. That dude's connected. Like, real connected. Not just some restaurant owner. I don't care who he's connected to. Marcus drained his glass and signaled for another. He threatened me. Put his hands on what's mine. Nobody does that. The third man, Danny Ortiz, had been quiet until now. He was the smart one, the one who thought before he acted. What's the play here, Marcus? You want us to rough him up? Burn down his restaurant? What? I want to send a message. Through her. The table went silent. Through Autumn? Jerome said carefully. Man, that's your baby's mother. She chose him over me. She called him at 3 a.m. instead of trying to work things out with her family. Marcus's voice was getting louder, whiskey making him bold. She needs to remember who she belongs to. Tyrell leaned back in his chair. So we grab her, scare her a little, show her that running to some rich asshole doesn't protect her. Exactly. What about the kid? Danny asked. Marcus hesitated. Some part of him, the part that remembered holding Sophie when she was born, that remembered teaching her to walk, balked at the idea of terrifying his daughter. But that part was getting smaller every day, drowned in whiskey and wounded pride. We don't touch Sophie. Just make sure Autumn understands the reality of her situation. When? Tyrell asked. Soon. I'm still figuring out where she's staying. She's not at her old apartment anymore, I've been watching. Marchesi probably moved her somewhere he thinks is safe. Marcus smiled, cold and bitter. But nowhere's safe if you know how to look. What Marcus didn't know was that Danny Ortiz had a cousin who worked security for a French Quarter hotel. What he didn't know was that Danny's cousin owed money to someone who reported to Marco Marchesi. What he didn't know was that word traveled fast in New Orleans when the right names were mentioned. By the time Marcus finished his third whiskey, Danny had already texted a warning to his cousin. By the time Marcus stumbled to his car, that warning had reached Marco. And by the time Marcus made it home to his cramped apartment in Metairie, Dominic Marchesi knew every word that had been spoken in that bar. Dominic stood in his office at Collette's, phone pressed to his ear, listening to Marco relay the information. Danny Ortiz is the weak link, Marco said. He's got outstanding warrants in Jefferson Parish. We can leverage that. Do it. I want Danny wearing a wire the next time Marcus makes a move. Dominic moved to the window, watching the quarter's evening transformation. And I want eyes on Tyrell Washington and Jerome Pike. If they so much as drive past the Garden District, I want to know immediately. You think he's really stupid enough to go after her? Desperate men do stupid things. And Marcus just lost his job, fired this morning for failing a random drug test. We arranged that? Didn't have to. He's been using for months. His foreman was just waiting for an excuse. Dominic's voice was flat. But yes, I made sure the test happened today. Cornered animals are predictable. He'll lash out. And when he does, we'll be ready. After hanging up, Dominic sat in the quiet of his office and allowed himself to acknowledge what he'd been avoiding for days. This wasn't just about protection anymore. Somewhere between Autumn's 3 a.m., phone call and watching her daughter fall asleep in a cardboard fort, this had become personal. He wanted her safe, yes, but he also wanted to know what she looked like in the morning before fear made her careful. Wanted to hear her laugh without checking over her shoulder first. Wanted to build something with her that wasn't founded on danger and desperation. But first, he had to eliminate the threat. And Marcus Broussard had just made that easier by planning something unforgivable. His phone rang. Autumn. Hey, he said, softening his voice in a way he only did for her now. Everything okay? Sophie's asking when you're coming back. She wants to show you the improvements to her fort. Despite everything, he smiled. Tell her I'll stop by tomorrow afternoon. I'm bringing Marco. He's apparently an expert in fort architecture. Autumn laughed, and the sound loosened something in his chest. She'll love that. Are you okay? You sound tense. Long day. Nothing I can't handle. Dominic. Her voice shifted, serious now. If something's happening, I need to know. This is my life, my daughter's safety. She was right. She deserved honesty even when it was hard. Marcus is planning something, he said. We have someone on the inside feeding us information. He's talking about sending you a message. He heard her sharp inhale. What kind of message? The kind I'm not going to let him deliver. Autumn, you're safe. The apartment is secure. I have people watching 24/7. He can't get to you. But he's trying, and he's going to fail. Spectacularly. Silence on the line. Then, I'm tired of being the reason people get hurt. You're not the reason. He is. His choices, his violence, his inability to let go. None of that is on you. Feels like it is. Then we're going to change how it feels. Dominic stood, decision crystallizing. Pack a bag for you and Sophie. Enough for a few days. Why? Where are we going? Somewhere Marcus will never find. Somewhere we can let him make his move without you being anywhere near it. You're using me as bait. I'm removing you from the board entirely. There's a difference. He could hear her breathing, could almost feel her mind working through scenarios. Autumn, trust me. Please. Another pause. Then, okay, when? Tonight, I'll be there in an hour. After he hung up, Dominic made 3 more calls, one to Marco, arranging transportation and security, one to his lawyer, ensuring everything he was about to do had plausible deniability, and one to a man named Vincent Chen, who owed the Marchesi family a favor that was 7 years old and had been accruing interest. By the time Dominic pulled up to Autumn's apartment, the pieces were in motion. The drive took them west, out of New Orleans and into the Delta country, where the land and water couldn't decide which was which. Spanish moss hung from cypress trees like tattered curtains. The air smelled like mud and growing things and secrets that stayed buried. Sophie slept in her car seat, exhausted from the excitement of a surprise adventure. Autumn sat in the passenger seat, watching the city disappear in the rearview mirror. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My family has a house on False River. No one knows about it except Marco and a few others. It's been in the family for generations." Dominic kept his eyes on the road. "Used to be where we went when things got complicated. Complicated is a nice word for dangerous. Sometimes they're the same thing." They drove in silence for a while, the radio playing low, some jazz station bleeding into static as they moved away from the city's signal. Finally, Autumn spoke. "Tell me about your family. The real story, not the rumors." Dominic considered what to share, how much truth she could handle. But she'd trusted him with her life and her daughters. She deserved honesty. "My grandfather came from Sicily in 1947 with nothing but a name and connections. He built an import business, legitimate at first. Olive oil, wine, textiles. But New Orleans in the 50s wasn't kind to immigrants, especially Italians. So he did what he had to do to survive. Made deals with people who operated outside the law. Protected his community when the police wouldn't. He became a criminal. He became necessary. There's a difference." Dominic's hands tightened on the wheel. "By the time my father took over in the 80s, the family was established. Legitimate businesses on top, darker operations underneath. Protection rackets, gambling, some smuggling. Nothing they could be proud of, but everything they needed to maintain power. And you inherited all of it. I inherited the empire and the enemies. But I've been trying to do something my father and grandfather never managed, actually go legitimate. The restaurants are clean. The real estate holdings are legal. I've been slowly divesting from anything that could bring federal attention." "Why?" He glanced at her. "Because I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. Because I want to build something that doesn't require violence to maintain. Because," he paused, "because I want a different life than the one I was born into. That's why you understand," Autumn said softly. "About wanting to escape." "Yeah." The house appeared an hour later, set back from the road and hidden behind a wall of live oaks. It was smaller than Autumn expected, a single-story Acadian-style cottage with a wide porch and shutters that had weathered to gray. Behind it, False River gleamed in the moonlight. "It's beautiful," Autumn breathed. "It's safe, that's what matters." Dominic parked and came around to help with Sophie, lifting the sleeping girl carefully. She stirred but didn't wake, just nestled against his shoulder with the absolute trust of childhood. The gesture did something to Autumn's heart. Watching this dangerous man cradle her daughter like she was made of glass. Watching him navigate the porch steps with careful precision. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with attraction, and everything to do with trust. Inside, the house smelled like cedar and old wood. The furniture was worn but comfortable, the kind of pieces that accumulated stories. Marco was already there, having arrived an hour earlier to secure the perimeter and stock the kitchen. "Guest rooms ready," Marco said, nodding toward the hallway. "I swept the property. We're clear." Dominic carried Sophie to the bedroom and laid her on the bed. Autumn followed, pulling off her daughter's shoes and covering her with a quilt that looked handmade. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For treating her like she matters." A lot of men would see her as baggage. Dominic's expression was unreadable. She's not baggage. She's the reason you're fighting. That makes her the most important person in this situation. Back in the living room, Marco had coffee brewing and a laptop open on the table. Danny's wearing the wire. Marcus called a meeting for tomorrow night. Says he's got a plan to teach everyone a lesson. Location? Dominic asked. Warehouse district. Same place Tyrell runs his chop shop operation. Marco pulled up a map. We'll have eyes inside and out. The moment he makes a concrete threat, we move. What about the police? Autumn asked from the doorway. Shouldn't we involve them? The police require evidence that holds up in court, Marco said. And Marcus's friends are good at making evidence disappear. We need a confession that's undeniable. And then what? You turn him in? Marco and Dominic exchanged a look. We do what's necessary, Dominic said carefully. Autumn's stomach dropped. You're not going to kill him. No. But I'm going to make sure he never comes near you again. And sometimes that requires methods the legal system doesn't provide. I don't want anyone dying because of me. No one's dying. Dominic moved closer. But Marcus is going to learn that threatening you was the biggest mistake of his life. And his friends are going to learn that helping him makes them complicit. After tomorrow night, this ends. Autumn wanted to argue, wanted to insist on doing things the right way through proper channels. But she'd tried that. The restraining order had expired. The police had dismissed her complaints. The system that was supposed to protect her had failed at every turn. Maybe it was time to stop fighting the help that was actually offered. Okay, she said quietly. But promise me you'll be careful. Both of. Are you? Always am? Marco said with a slight smile. Dominic just nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. Later that night, after Marco left to coordinate surveillance and Sophie was sleeping soundly in the guest room, Autumn and Dominic sat on the back porch watching False River ripple under moonlight. Crickets sang in the marsh grass. Somewhere, a night heron called. This is nice, Autumn said. Peaceful. My grandmother used to bring me here when I was a kid. Said the city made people forget how to breathe. Dominic leaned back in the wooden chair, exhaustion finally showing around his eyes. I haven't been here in 3 years. Why not? Too many memories. After my mother died, I couldn't stand being anywhere that reminded me of her. Autumn reached over and took his hand. The gesture surprised them both. His fingers were warm and calloused in places that suggested he hadn't always had people to do his violence for him. Tell me about her, Autumn said. So he did. He told her about a woman who loved opera and hated cooking, who could speak 3 languages but refused to learn English properly because she said it sounded like gravel. Who taught him that being strong meant knowing when to bend and that family was both your greatest gift and your heaviest chain. She would have liked you, Dominic said. You remind me of her. That same quiet strength. I don't feel strong. That's because you're doing the work. Strength looks like exhaustion when you're in the middle of it. They sat in comfortable silence, hands still linked, the space between them charged with possibility and restraint. Finally, Autumn spoke. What happens after tomorrow? After tomorrow, you're free. You can stay in New Orleans or move somewhere else. Stay in the apartment or find your own place. Whatever you want. And us? The question hung in the humid air. Dominic turned to look at her. Really look. And she saw hunger there tempered by honor. That depends on what you want, he said carefully. I'm not going to pressure you, Autumn. You've had enough men trying to control your choices. What if I want you? His breath caught. Then I'm yours. The simplicity of it undid her. No games, no manipulation, no hidden costs, just honest want offered without expectation. She leaned in slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't. When their lips met, it was soft at first, a question asked and answered. Then deeper, his hand coming up to cup her face, her fingers threading through his hair. They kissed like people who'd been waiting for permission they'd finally given themselves. Like safety and desire could exist in the same breath. Like tomorrow's danger made tonight's tenderness precious instead of foolish. When they finally pulled apart, Autumn's heart was racing. I should check on Sophie, she whispered, not moving. Probably. And you should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. She smiled. Dangerous. Sometimes they're the same thing. He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent, then stood and pulled her to her feet. Go. I'll take the couch. Dominic, I'm taking the couch, he repeated firmly. When we do this properly, it won't be because danger made us reckless. It'll be because we chose it in daylight. She nodded, understanding what he wasn't saying. That he wanted her, yes, but he also wanted to do right by her, to prove he wasn't another man taking advantage of her vulnerability. "Good night," she said. "Good night, Autumn." She walked to the guest room and slipped into bed beside Sophie, wrapping her arms around her sleeping daughter. Through the thin walls, she could hear Dominic moving in the living room, the creak of furniture, the house settling into night. For the first time in a year, Autumn fell asleep without fear. And for the first time in his life, Dominic Marchesi understood what it meant to have something worth protecting that wasn't power or money or legacy. It was one woman and her daughter, sleeping soundly while he stood watch. Tomorrow, he'd eliminate the threat. Tonight, he'd guard what mattered. Section 7. The breaking point. Major conflict. Danny Ortiz was sweating through his shirt despite the warehouse's industrial fans churning stale air. The wire taped to his chest felt like it was burning through his skin, broadcasting his betrayal to Marco Marchesi's people parked 3 blocks away in an unmarked van. Marcus paced in front of a workbench cluttered with tools and car parts, his movements jerky with cocaine and rage. Tyrell leaned against a stolen Escalade, cleaning his nails with a knife. Jerome stood by the door, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "She thinks she can just disappear," Marcus was saying, his voice climbing. "Move to some fancy apartment, hide behind some mobster, pretend I don't exist, like I'm nothing. So what's the plan?" Tyrell asked, bored. He'd heard this rant 3 times already. "The plan is we grab her, tonight if possible, tomorrow at the latest. Dominic Marchesi thinks moving her to the Garden District makes her untouchable?" Marcus laughed, bitter and sharp. "I've been watching. I know which building. I know she walks Sophie to school every morning at 7:30. All we need is the right moment." Danny's stomach turned. "Man, grabbing her is kidnapping. Federal shit. You really want that heat?" "I don't care about heat." Marcus slammed his hand on the workbench. "I care about respect. She's my family. Sophie's my daughter. Nobody takes what's mine and gets away with it." "Your family?" Jerome spoke up, his voice careful. "Marcus, you broke Autumn's wrist. You made her scared to sleep in her own house. That's not family, man." That's what?" Marcus spun on him. "Say it. That's what?" Jerome swallowed hard. "Nothing. Forget it." But Marcus was already moving, getting in Jerome's face. "You think I'm the problem? She's the one who ran. She's the one who took my daughter and lied to judges and made me look like some kind of monster." "You put your hands on her," Jerome said quietly, "multiple times. That makes you the monster." The punch came fast, Marcus's fist, connecting with Jerome's jaw hard enough to snap his head back. Jerome stumbled, hand coming up to his face, shock and anger warring in his expression. "Anybody else want to question me?" Marcus looked around the warehouse. Tyrell had straightened, hand on his knife. Danny stood frozen, the wire under his shirt suddenly feeling like a death sentence. "We're done," Jerome said, spitting blood. "I'm not helping you terrorize your ex. Get yourself some therapy instead of new felonies." He walked toward the door. Marcus grabbed his arm. "You walk out that door, we're done. You understand? 15 years of friendship, over. Then we're done." Jerome pulled free and left, the metal door clanging shut behind him. The warehouse fell silent, except for the fan's mechanical wheeze. "Fine," Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. "We don't need him. 3 of us is enough. Danny, you're driving. Tyrell, your muscle. I'll handle Autumn." "Handle how?" Danny asked, hating how his voice shook. Marcus smiled. "I'm going to remind her what happens when you abandon your family. Maybe a few bruises, nothing permanent. Just enough to make her think twice about staying under Marchesi's protection." "And if he comes after us?" Tyrell asked. "Let him come. I'm tired of running. Tired of being scared of some restaurant owner who thinks he's Al Capone." Marcus pulled a gun from his waistband, a cheap 9mm that looked like it had history. "Tomorrow morning, 7:25. She leaves the building with Sophie, walks 4 blocks to school. We grab her in between, quick and clean. Danny, you pick us up. Tyrell, you handle anyone who tries to play hero." Danny felt bile rise in his throat. "And the kid?" "Sophie stays with whoever's nearby. We're not monsters." Marcus's eyes were glassy, unfocused. "We just take Autumn somewhere quiet, have a conversation about respect and family, then let her go. Simple." Nothing about it was simple. Everything about it was nightmare fuel that would end in someone dying. "I need to think about this," Danny said carefully. "This is heavy, Marcus. Kidnapping charges. You're in or you're out. Choose now. Danny looked at Tyrell, who shrugged like he didn't care which way it went. Looked at the gun in Marcus's hand. Looked at the door Jerome had walked through. I'm in. Danny lied. But I need to grab some things from my car. Battery's dying on my phone. Marcus studied him for a long moment, paranoia sharpening his features. Then nodded. 5 minutes. Danny walked out into the humid night and managed to make it around the corner before vomiting into a storm drain. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone and called the number Marco had given. Him. He's planning to grab her tomorrow morning. Danny gasped. 7:25. On Sophie's walk to school. He's got a gun. He's using. This is going to get bloody. Where are you now? Marco's voice was calm, controlled. Outside the warehouse. I told him I needed to grab something from my car. Get in your car and drive to the quarter, Colette's back entrance. Don't go home, don't call anyone else, you're done with this. What about Marcus? He's our problem now. 3 hours later, Dominic stood in his office at Colette's, listening to the wire recording for the 3rd time. Each listen made his blood run colder. He's going to grab her at 7:25, Marco said unnecessarily. We have maybe 10 hours to move. She's not going back to that apartment, Dominic said flatly. Not tomorrow, not ever. Marcus just threatened to kidnap and assault her. That's enough for the police. Is it? Marco pulled up his laptop. We got the recording through illegal means. Danny's wire wasn't court-approved. Any lawyer worth his retainer gets this thrown out. Then we don't use the legal system. Marco looked up sharply. Boss, if you're thinking what I think, I'm thinking that Marcus Broussard planned to kidnap Autumn in front of her daughter. He's armed. He's using cocaine. He's desperate and dangerous, and the law isn't going to stop him fast enough. Dominic's voice was ice. So we stop him ourselves. How? We give him what he wants. An opportunity to grab Autumn when she's vulnerable. Dominic pulled out his phone. Except, it won't be Autumn. And the person he grabs will be more than ready. Marco's eyes widened. You're going to use a decoy. We've done it before. Not with someone planning violence. Boss, if this goes wrong, it won't. Dominic was already calling a number. When the voice answered, he said, Angela, I need a favor. How do you feel about playing bait? Angela Toussaint was 32, ex-military, and ran security for 3 of the Marchesi family's properties. She was also 5'6", blonde, and from a distance could pass for Autumn if you didn't look too close. I'm listening, Angela said. Tomorrow morning, you're going to walk out of an apartment building in the Garden District at 7:25. You're going to be dressed like a woman taking her kid to school, except the kid will be a duffel bag that looks child-sized from a distance. You're going to walk 4 blocks. And when Marcus Broussard and his friend try to grab you, you're going to let them. Let them. Long enough for them to commit to the felony. Then you're going to defend yourself while Marco's people move in and document everything. Dominic's voice was cold and precise. I want this ironclad. I want witnesses, video, physical evidence. I want Marcus Broussard arrested with charges so serious that even his lawyer can't make them disappear. And if he shoots first, you'll be wearing a vest. And Marco will have 3 sharpshooters in position, making sure he never gets a second shot off. Silence on the line. Then, I'm in. What time do you need me? 6 a.m. Marco will brief you. Dominic ended the call and looked at his cousin. Alert the team. I want this operation tighter than anything we've ever done. If Angela gets hurt, if civilians get caught in crossfire, if anything goes wrong, it won't, Marco said. We'll be ready. After Marco left to coordinate, Dominic sat alone in his office and allowed himself one moment of doubt. He was about to orchestrate a situation that could end in violence. Could end with people hurt or worse. All to protect one woman and her daughter. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Sophie's drawing taped to a refrigerator. Saw Autumn's tear-stained face when she talked about her daughter asking why Mommy cried at night. Saw the bruises she'd tried to hide. No, there was no doubt. Marcus Broussard had chosen this path. Dominic was simply making sure it ended the right way. He picked up his phone and called Autumn. She answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. Dominic, what time is it? Late. I'm sorry for waking you. I just needed to hear your voice. A rustle of sheets. What happened? Nothing yet, but tomorrow might get complicated. I need you to stay at the River House for a few more days. Why? What's going on? He wanted to lie, wanted to protect her from knowing how close danger had come, but she'd asked for honesty. Marcus planned to grab you tomorrow morning, on Sophie's walk to school. He heard her breath catch, heard the fear that followed. We're not going to let him, Dominic said quickly. We have a plan. By tomorrow night, this will be over. He'll be in custody, and you'll be free to live your life without looking over your shoulder. How? By giving him exactly what he thinks he wants, and making sure it destroys him. More silence. Then, small and scared, I want anyone getting hurt because of me. The only person getting hurt is Marcus, and only because he chose violence over walking away. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. And Dominic? Her voice was stronger now. After this is over, after he's arrested and I don't have to be scared anymore, can we have that daylight conversation? Despite everything, he smiled. Yes. We can have as many daylight conversations as you want. Good. Because I think I'm falling for you, and I'd like to do it without worrying that you're going to get shot protecting me. His chest tightened. Autumn. I know it's too soon. I know it's complicated. But after everything, the apartment, the protection, the way you are with Sophie, I can't pretend I don't feel it. I feel it too, he said quietly. And when this is done, we're going to figure out what it means. Together. They talked for another few minutes about nothing important, just the sound of each other's voices making the late hour less lonely. Finally, Autumn yawned, and Dominic insisted she sleep. After hanging up, he stood and moved to the window. The quarter was quiet at this hour, just the rumble of distant delivery trucks and the perpetual smell of river and rot that never quite left the city. Tomorrow, Marcus Broussard would make his move, and Dominic would be waiting with the full weight of his family's power and resources to ensure that move was his last. He'd promised Autumn her freedom. Now it was time to deliver it. 7:23 a.m. Angela Toussaint stepped out of the Garden District apartment building wearing Autumn's borrowed jacket and carrying a child-sized duffel bag. From 50 yards away she could pass. From 20, Marcus would know. That was the point. She walked with a mother's purposeful stride, checking an invisible watch, adjusting the bag's weight, 4 blocks to where the school would be. Marcus's Charger idled at the corner, Tyrell in the passenger seat, desperation and cocaine making them sloppy. 7:26. Angela hit the 3rd block, quiet residential street, oak trees providing cover for Marco's 3 sharpshooters positioned on rooftops. 2 unmarked cars at either end, cameras recording from 5 angles. The Charger's doors opened. Marcus approached from the left, Tyrell from the right. Classic pincer. Angela kept walking, let them get close enough to commit. Autumn, Marcus called. We need to talk. Angela turned. Let recognition hit him. Let him see the wrong face. Who the hell? Marcus started. That's when Angela dropped the duffel and moved. 1 clean strike to Marcus's solar plexus, folding him. Tyrell lunged with his knife. She sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, twisted until the blade clattered to pavement. Police, down on the ground. Marco's people swarmed from 3 directions, badges flashing, weapons drawn. Marcus tried to run, made it 6 steps before a tackle brought him down hard. The gun fell from his waistband, skittering across concrete. That's kidnapping, Marco said, crouching beside Marcus as cuffs clicked shut. Attempted assault, weapons charges. And we've got it all on video and audio. Your lawyer can't make this disappear. Marcus's face was pressed to the pavement, but Dominic heard him cursing, crying, still not understanding that it was over. By 8 a.m., Marcus Broussard was in central lockup facing charges that would keep him locked up for years. By 9, Dominic was driving back to False River, exhaustion and relief making the highway blur. Autumn met him on the porch, Sophie still sleeping inside. She searched his face for damage, for blood, for signs that the cost had been too high. It's done, Dominic said simply. He's in custody. NOPD has everything they need. You're safe now. She collapsed into him, sobs shaking her whole body. He held her through it, through the fear releasing, through the year of terror finally ending, through the moment when survival became living. What happens now? She asked when she could speak. Now you choose. Stay in New Orleans or leave. Keep the apartment or find something else. Work at Collette's or try something new. He tilted her face up. The only thing I hope you choose is me. But that's up to you. She kissed him then, in daylight like he'd promised. soft and certain and free. I choose you, she whispered against his mouth. I choose New Orleans. I choose the life we can build together. Even knowing what I am, what my family does. You saved my life. You protected my daughter. You gave me back my freedom. She smiled. I know exactly what you are, and I love you anyway. 3 months later, Sophie's 7th birthday party filled the Garden District apartment with children's laughter and the organized chaos of cake and presents. Autumn stood in the kitchen, watching Dominic teach Sophie's friends how to make pizza dough, his expensive shirt covered in flour. Mrs. Chen had flown in from her daughter's place in Houston. Marco brought his girlfriend. Even Jerome showed up, having testified against Marcus in exchange for immunity. The trial had been swift. 23 years for kidnapping conspiracy, assault, weapons charges. No parole for 15. Marcus Broussard would be an old man before he tasted freedom again. Autumn didn't feel guilty about it anymore. She'd stopped carrying his choices like they were hers to bear. Mommy! Sophie ran over, face chocolate smeared and glowing. Dominic says we can get a dog. Can we, please? Autumn looked at Dominic, who shrugged with exaggerated innocence. I may have mentioned it was a possibility. A small possibility, Autumn corrected, laughing. After we talk about it. But Sophie was already dragging Dominic toward her friends, explaining the kind of dog they'd get, where it would sleep, what they'd name it. Marco appeared at Autumn's elbow. He's different, since you, lighter. He gave me my life back. You gave him something to protect that actually mattered. Marco smiled. My uncle would have liked you. You're good for him. After the party, after the cleanup, after Sophie fell asleep in her room surrounded by new toys, Autumn and Dominic stood on the balcony watching the city lights. I talked to my lawyer, Dominic said. The last of my father's old operations are officially divested. We're clean. Legitimate. Just a restaurant owner and his properties. How does it feel? Terrifying. Like I don't know who I am without the danger. He pulled her closer. But I'm figuring it out. We'll figure it out together. He produced a small box from his pocket. Inside, a simple gold ring with a single diamond. I know it's fast, Dominic said. I know we're still learning each other. But I also know I don't want to waste time pretending I don't want forever with you. Autumn's hands shook as she took the box. Yes, I didn't ask yet. You don't need to. The answer is yes. He slid the ring on her finger, kissed her like they had all the time in the world, like danger was just a memory instead of a lifestyle. Below them, New Orleans breathed beautiful and broken and full of second chances. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Autumn Hayes wasn't running from anything. She was running toward everything she'd ever wanted. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.